Running isn't something we usually need to think about, and we presume that because we've done it since childhood, then we're pretty good at it by now. But that said, there are still many ways in which you can improve your running technique. We're going to be breaking down your run and bringing you our top 5 essential skills to run faster. First up, we've got breathing. Now, it's not quite like in swimming, but breathing efficiently and in a relaxed fashion is key to running well. Obviously, your muscles need oxygen, and the faster you run, the quicker you've got to get the oxygen into your lungs, so the harder and faster your breath will become. You might well have had that horrible feeling when you just can't quite get enough breath in, or your chest feels tight. It's actually made you go back down to a walk. If you're new to running, this can take a bit of getting used to, but with practice, you'll be able to manage your breathing and focus on the rest of your running technique. It's easy to say, but staying relaxed is key. You'll need to breathe in and out through your mouth, as you won't be able to get enough oxygen from just nose breathing. That said, though, you can combine the two, and you often see long distance runners wearing nose strips just to help them breathe. As you start to build up your run, you should find a pace that's comfortable to hold, and with that, a breathing rhythm that's sustainable. Naturally, you'll find that you'll breathe around your stride pattern, and this is likely to change depending on how hard you're running. It's worth concentrating on this and seeing when you inhale and exhale and work out if it's always on the same side. Controlling this and even changing it can help keep your body more balanced. It's also thought that breathing on alternate foot strikes can actually help prevent a stitch. Try to keep your shoulders relaxed and down. If they end up shrugging towards your ears, then you're reducing the capacity of your ribs to move and expand and deflate your lungs fully. You'll see fatigued runners often running with shoulders coming up high, starting to fold, or even dropping their head to one side. All of this ends up having a limiting effect on the breathing, and as a result, it makes that runner even more tired. If you do find that you get a bit tense when you're running, then you can incorporate some breathing techniques, or even something like yoga, when you retrain yourself to breathe correctly, and then that should positively cross over to your running. That leads us on nicely to posture. Now, we've already touched on the negative effects of poor posture on your breathing, but it doesn't stop there. It can actually affect the whole of your running performance. It can be confusing. Sometimes you hear people saying you need to be more upright, then you hear other coaches saying you need to lean forwards. Now, it's a combination of both, to be honest, but you need to make sure that you're not too upright and rigid, but you also don't want to be folded and bent forwards. It's a fine line, literally. You want to run tall, so imagine the distance from your ankle up to your head to be as long as naturally possible, yet with a slight forward lean that's coming from the ground up. So if you were running up a gentle slope, for example, you'd automatically find yourself leaning into it slightly, and you can even find a hill to practice this feeling on. When you come back onto the track, it's certainly easier to get this feeling when you're running at a slightly faster pace. As you start off running, you shift your body weight slightly forwards without even noticing. This is helping you to instigate that forward motion. Try to carry that over as you get into your stride. If you feel like you're over-exaggerating this, then you're probably getting it just about right. If you can, try and get someone else to film you when you're running, or even look back through race photos, because it's amazing how different you'll actually look to how you think you look, which certainly is the case for me. Next up, it's hip flexibility, which again leads on from our last point, because if you want to have a desirable running posture, then you need to have good mobility at your hips. And in particular, I'm talking about hip extension. So that's your ability to move your leg backwards behind you, basically. Now, most of us are guilty of spending far too much time sitting in our everyday lives, or as triathletes, being on a bicycle, all of which involve being flexed in this area. Being tight at the front of the hip can contribute to that folded, bent over posture, and just makes running efficiently that much harder. Before a session, once you've done a light jog warm-up, add in some single leg swings to open up the front of the hip. And then adding in drills such as walking lunges are another way to actively stretch the hip flexors whilst you're firing up the core muscles and the other stabilizers needed for running. Then, once you've finished your work or your session, add in a few static hip flexor stretches. And once you've improved that range at the hip, you'll be able to lengthen your stride if you need to, and most importantly, engage and utilize one of the more powerful muscles, the glutes. Talking of which, we've actually already made a video on glute activation, which you'll find the link to at the end of this video. Now, contact time. The main difference between walking and running slowly and running fast is the amount of time that your foot will spend on the ground. And this is known as contact time. And if you watch the professional runners, even those running at a marathon pace, you'll notice that they have a very short time that their foot spends on the ground. And it's generally thought that the quicker the contact time, the more efficient the runner. It isn't something that you can change overnight, and it usually becomes harder to keep it short the more fatigued you become. But if you incorporate it into regular drills within your running program, it's the quickest way to start to see an improvement in that contact time. A very simple exercise that also doubles up as a warm-up for a gym session is skipping. Keep it fast and light, and if you're an advanced skipper, then you can start to alternate legs to give even more of a running feel. There are a couple of other drills that I find actually really help me working on my contact time, and they're best done on a track or asphalt so you can really focus on your technique. High knee skips. As it sounds, it's a skipping type drill with high knees, but the focus is the contact time of the foot on the ground rather than actually getting any height. So you can pause between each skip motion and just think about getting that foot off the ground as fast as possible. You need to remain in a nice upright posture and think about driving the leg down and back up in a fast, fluid movement. Straight leg strides. This is another of my favorites, but it does take a little bit of practice. So the idea is you're going to keep your legs as straight as possible, and you're contacting the ground with more the ball of your foot, trying to keep a stiff ankle. And again, think about getting your foot off the ground as fast as possible. Actually, you'll find this drill really hard to do if you don't keep a short contact time. And both of those aforementioned drills can lead really nicely into strides. So after doing 20 meters or so of each of the drills, start to move your body weight into that forwards lean and then progress from the drill into a fast, light-footed run, keeping your focus on that short contact time and good posture. And you should be running at around 80 to 90% of your maximum effort for about 60 meters and then just jog it out. Finally, we've got pacing, and this is one that's often easily overlooked, but is important for being able to race and train efficiently. Knowing your ability and your fitness is key, so you can then adequately push yourself when your training requires it, but you can also stick to your plan when you need to. It's essential to make sure you vary your training at different paces so that your body can adapt and get fitter and stronger. So for example, if you're doing an easy run, it needs to be easy from the start right the way through to the finish. And then if you're doing race pace efforts, for example, you need to make sure that you're running at race pace, not faster at the beginning and then slower at the end. Obviously, you can use a watch that's got GPS and then check your pace on there, but it's good to know the feel of different efforts and pace. So a track or a marked distance is a great place where you can practice this. A simple exercise would be jog a lap of the track at target pace and then use your pace watch or check your pace at every 100 meters. Then go straight into another lap, but only look at your watch when you get to the end. And this should be fairly easy when you're running at a slow pace, but continue to practice this at different paces using the same principle. Another variation which you can do easily if you maybe don't have a track, and it's something I often do, is run a set effort for say 2 minutes hard, then have a rest and then run back to the start. And in theory, you should end up back where you started at the same time. And you can mix this up by doing varying length of distances, and just helps you practice having that consistent pace. Pacing in triathlon is key, especially when we add in the swimming and the cycling beforehand. If, for example, you're doing something like an Ironman though, when you start off the marathon, it can feel actually painfully slow to run at your target race pace, but you'll definitely appreciate it by the time you get to mile 24 or 25 of that marathon. These are just my top picks, and there are so many more out there. So go and give these a try and find out what works best for you. And if you've enjoyed this and you want to make sure you get all of our videos from GTN, hit the globe to subscribe. And if you want to see that video that I mentioned earlier, talking about how to activate your glute muscles, well, that's just here. And if you want to see a video on how to warm up for a running session, we've made one just here.